Good evening to you viewers. You are most welcome to join us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. The 30 children and their mothers confined in a worship house in Bamenda, northwest region of the country. They say that they got exposed to the outside world for the first time. That is what they say. And also in this newscast, we take a look at what Cameroonians say as a few or less than 24 hours to the election of the new Pope, that is Pope Francis. They say that the Pope should not relent at putting an end to the ills plaguing the Catholic denomination, and they are also saying that the Pope Francis should wage an endless war against clerical sex and homosexuality. Plus, we take you to Buea, southwest region of the country, where southwest officials have expressed satisfaction at the evolution of work ahead of 50th anniversary celebrations in Buea. These are major headlines, details and more just in a moment. Thanks indeed, viewers, for joining us this evening in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. We begin right away in Rome, where Pope Francis has begun his first day at the helm of the Catholic Church with a prayer or a mass with cardinals. The first ever Latin American Pope has received a flood of goodwill messages from Christians around the world. And like we earlier announced in the headlines, the Pope has a series of challenges, and of course, the most preoccupying being the scandals of clerical sex and infighting within the church. Tonight we have a Reverend Sister with us. Good evening, and thank you so much, Sister Jacqueline Atabong, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mimi.
Actually, as we are speaking now, the Pope Francis is actually granting the Mass in Rome. So what's the significance of this Mass just less than or about 24 hours to his election?
The Mass is the highest form of thanksgiving. And so after being elected as Pope, it is just natural that he and all his brothers and the whole church would gather together to say thank you to God for giving us another leader. He is representing Christ, and we had been waiting for this day. We are happy, and that is why he's celebrating a Thanksgiving Mass.
And of course, hoping with the hope that we are going to be having images of the ongoing Mass service that is taking place in Rome. The first ever Latin American Pope to be elected. We shall surely be coming to the images of the Mass ceremony, and of course, our technicians are putting everything in place to make sure that we have the images as soon as we can. And just to find out from you, how has the atmosphere been in the Catholic Church ever since he was elected to now?
There is great excitement, there is happiness, there is joy. Everybody is happy that we have a new Pope and we have a new leader. And we are also impressed with the very person who has been elected. It's the first time somebody is coming outside Europe, the first ever South American Pope. So we are also happy because we hope it's going to be different because it's from a different part of the world.
Did you see a different turnout, a different way of turnout in the church, like never before, as Christians too were in Rome just waiting for the new Pope to be announced?
Yes, the Catholics are always loyal to the church and to the Pope. And, whenever there is an event concerning the Pope, the Catholics turn out in their numbers. When the Pope dies or when anything happens, when Pope Benedict was going, they were all there. And now they're electing a new Pope. The Catholics are all there because they always support their leader.
And of course, Sister Jacqueline Atabong, we shall be coming back to you, and just to tell our viewers that we shall be bringing the first images of the first Mass, of course, that Pope Francis is having with cardinals that is taking place in Rome. Now we continue and with the profile of Pope Francis, and Nabila, staff lady Nabila, took interest on the profile and of course the challenges that await the new Pope. This is her report.
Pope Francis is the former Archbishop of Buenos Aires and a member of the Jesuits, the biggest Roman Catholic order. He was born in Argentina to parents of Italian descent on December 17, 1936, and he is the first non-European Pope for over 1,000 years. He holds a degree as a chemical technician but chose the priesthood as he proceeded to the seminary. Cardinal Jorge Mario was later on ordained priest on December 13, 1969. A teacher of theology, Pope Francis was rector of the Philosophical and Theological Faculty of the San Miguel Diocese. On March 1986, he completed his doctoral thesis in theology, and 6 years later he was appointed Bishop of Buenos Aires by Pope John Paul II, now blessed. The same Blessed John Paul II proclaimed him cardinal on February 21, 2001. Before his recent election as Pope, Cardinal Jorge Mario serves as president of the Bishops' Conference of Argentina. He was also member of the Congregations for Divine Worship and Discipline of the Sacrament, member of the Pontifical Council for the Family and Pontifical Commission for Latin America. He was noted for his humility and took so much interest in evangelizing to the poor and underprivileged.
And the first ever Pope, of course, to adopt the name Francis. And why the choice of Pope Francis? Observers say that he was closer to the poor and the underprivileged, and his activities too were geared towards helping the underprivileged in the society, just like St. Francis, a celebrated Roman Catholic saint. And Annabella, once again, in the following report, tells us about the person, St. Francis, that is the celebrated Roman Catholic saint.
Saint Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of animals and ecology, was a Roman Catholic saint. He was a poor little man who astounded and inspired the church by taking the gospel literally, by actually following all what Christ said and did, joyfully, without limit and without a mite of self-importance. He fell very ill and came to see the emptiness of life. Francis had several conversations with Jesus Christ while praying in the chapel, as Christ instructed him to build his house, the church. Francis of Assisi later gave up all material things. He went further as selling all he had, even his clothing, just to assist the poor. He became a beggar, which was not at all welcomed by his family members and friends. The life of St. Francis of Assisi was totally devoted to prayer and active preaching of the gospel. The man of God had the capability of understanding animals. He communicated with all animals and birds, and in short, he never smashed an ant while walking in the street. Francis had always wanted to be a missionary in Syria or Africa, but was prevented by his ill health. During the last days of his life, Francis was half blind and seriously ill, but never stopped at preaching the gospel even on his dying bed. 2 years before his death, St. Francis of Assisi received the same real and painful wounds of Christ in his hands, feet and side. While on his deathbed, he said over and over again, "Be praised, O Lord, for our sister death." He also sang Psalms 141 and at the end asked his superior to remove his clothing. He died at 44, lying naked on the ground, just like his mentor, Jesus Christ.
As the first Latin American to be elected Pope, he is also a Jesuit, a community of Catholic priests founded some 500 years ago. And who are Jesuits and how vital is that community in the Catholic denomination? Roland Alcon caught up with a Jesuit priest in the capital city Yaoundé and now attempts an answer in the following report.
At the Yaoundé Melen St. Francis of Xavier Parish, it's found a Jesuit community. We met with Reverend Collins Dinlazi, Deputy University Chaplain of the parish, who is happy and proud that, like him, Pope Francis is a Jesuit.
A Jesuit being elected as the Pope, he is now in a special way universal to the church. And this is the desire of Jesuits. We become men who are universal. We are not very much particular, but universal, going out to evangelize.
But who are Jesuits?
Yeah, Jesuits are men called to serve God in the manner of Ignatius of Loyola, who is the founder of this congregation some 500 years ago.
Jesuits are vital when the church faces challenges.
When people talk about the particularity of Jesuits, you go maybe around the 16th century when we had issues about Reformation and Counter-Reformation. So Jesuits were considered to be very, very vital in trying to reconstitute the church from different challenges that came from the Protestant world.
Late Reverend Njebemveng and Reverend Mera Hebga are some prominent Cameroonian Jesuits. We concluded our chat by asking the man of God what it takes to become a Jesuit priest.
To become a Jesuit, first of all, you must be convinced of the vocation to serve Jesus as a priest, and not just a kind of idea that comes into your mind. You must be convinced you're called to this vocation. And when you're convinced that you're called to this vocation, the 15 years will be like one day.
And now let's talk about the expectations as well as the reactions of many Catholic Christians in the capital city Yaoundé after the election of Pope Francis. Some Catholics say that they want the new Pope to tackle the new challenges facing the Catholic Church, like sexual abuse, clerical sex in the Catholic Church, as well as also infighting within the church. And they gave their reactions as well as their expectations to our Yaoundé-based correspondent Roland Akon.
The church has been facing a lot of challenges from many people, most who are not even Catholics, who are feeling that the church should accept horrible practices like homosexuality, pedophilia, and lesbianism. Those are horrible things, and we think that he is going to still stand.
To continue leading the sheep of Jesus Christ, as the other Pope has been doing. So where he's ended, he starts from there, and then he takes us just the right way the church wants us to do. The church has always been against homosexuality, and I want him to stand against it. And with the support of our prayers and everything, we'll stand against homosexuality.
We want him to draw inspiration from St. Francis and help the church what Francis of Assisi did. So from that name we need a lot, and it's a wonderful thing because I believe that it is the inspiration of the Holy Spirit that has guided him to take that name, St.
We expect that Pope should be the wonderful Pope we want him to be, that he should lead the Catholic Church in good faith.
Catholic Church in good faith. Now we take you to Bamenda Northwest region of the country, where calm is yet to return in Dongla after 30 children were discovered within the confines of members of a church. And from Kenneth, a Bamenda-based correspondent in the following report tells us that the evangelist was only unveiled after the death of one of theirs. His report.
The people of the metropolitan city of Bamenda could not believe their eyes following what they heard and saw. With discussions on wonder shall never end. An evangelist in disguise who claims he is the man of God with 8 women, living with 7 men and having 30 children, was discovered yesterday following the death of one of the members who was supposed to be buried without the knowledge of the family members. This thanks to the exposure of one of the family members, an ex-policeman who called the attention of the family members, as this family member explains.
He has been living here with this people for the past 11 years. Yes, 11 years. After his graduation from the he stayed with us for a while at home. Came back, and started visiting. 2 people from here came to the house to announce his death. We never even heard he was sick. We didn't know he was sick all along some rooms and discovered some children lying down there, all of them sleeping at the same time, which is very suspicious and unusual.
Married to 8 wives, this fake evangelist was to be lynched thanks to the intervention of the forces of law and order and the national chairman of the Social Democratic Front, Nijon Fundi, who did everything possible to calm down the situation that had reached fever height.
Now, it was after this shocking discovery that the children as well as their mothers went out of that building for the first time. We are still in Bamenda Northwest region of the country, and the evangelist claims he fathers all the children and that he was equally their teacher. From Kenneth once again tells us more from Bamenda.
Children who are impregnated by their father, no birth certificate, and with one common name known as Salem. Attending classes behind closed doors. No doubt this is the first time for these mothers and children to step out of this compound for close to about 8 years, with their father as the main classroom teacher. As he explains,
Class 3. In which school? Which school? I am the one teaching them maths.
The name of the school, what?
I am the one teaching them maths.
All subjects.
Well, I bring them up with the Lord God as the word of God says, a father to bring up God.
Do they go to church?
I train them in the word of God.
With these 30 children under these conditions, what next? As the senior divisional officer for MESAM tells us.
Thanks indeed, Fon Kenneth, for that package from Bamenda Northwest region of the country. Now, political parties have begun flooding the Yaoundé Elekam office as midnight today draws the curtain for the files of nominated candidates for upcoming senatorial elections to be deposited. And the CPDM had so far retained the list of 5 candidates or 5 mayors, contrary to reports that the CPDM or the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement had sidelined or set aside mayors and deputies to take part in the upcoming senatorial elections. And so far, the party has retained a list of 5 mayors to take part, one of them being the mayor of the Boya subdivision, Mbela Moki Charles. Yaoundé-based correspondent Roland Akon tells us more in the following report.
Mbela Moki Charles is one of the 5 mayors whose candidacy was accepted by the CPDM Investiture Commission for the senatorial. The Investiture Commission rejected the files of all deputies and most mayors for party reasons. Cavaye's dream of becoming a senator has been quashed. The speaker's name was disqualified by the commission. Will Cavaye remain speaker when a new bureau is elected this session at the assembly? That is the question. The CPDM list is made up of 140 substantive and alternate candidates for the senatorial. The SDF is competing in all the 10 regions of Cameroon except the south. Political parties were dropping the list of their candidates at the different Elekam offices in Yaoundé by the time of this report. Board members of Elekam meet tomorrow in Yaoundé in a session with one item on agenda, the April 14th senatorial.
And it is after that report or before that report that there were talks of whether deputies or mayors were going to take part in upcoming senatorial elections in the country. And just to notify that there were reports that after the meeting that took place, or the CPDM meeting which took place yesterday in the capital city, Yaoundé, there were reports that deputies and mayors of the CPDM political party were not going to take part in upcoming senatorial elections in the country. And so far we hear that House speakers, the file of the House Speaker Cavaye Yeke Jibril has been rejected. And in a statement today published by the Director General of Elections Cameroon, Mohamed Sani Tanimo, he has determined the maximum size of campaign posters. He said that the posters will be printed on each party's expense and that the color on the posters should be the same on the ballot papers. Now it is after this incident that the government of the Northwest, we take you now to Boya Southwest region of the country, where administrative officials are saying that earmarked projects ahead of 50th anniversary celebrations are moving as planned. And Southwest Governor Bernard Okalia Bilai was speaking during a press briefing he granted journalists in Boya Southwest region of the country, where he also called on local population to also play an active role as far as making the historic event a success is concerned. Aboya-based correspondent Derek Jato tells us more in the following report.
This is the first time the Southwest Governor is briefing the press on the level of preparedness ahead of the 50th anniversary of the reunification celebration of Cameroon to take place in Boya. Governor Bernard Okalia Bilai, during this press briefing at the conference hall in his office, sounded positive on the level of execution of project earmarked for the event. For instance, apart from the roads and structures that have been renovated or newly constructed, The long-existing Buya water crisis is now history.
From today, the entire town will have water.
To give a befitting honor to an event that comes only once in half a century, the Southwest Governor further called on the entire population of the region not to allow the preparation in the hands of the government alone, but the people should individually and collectively prepare to welcome President Paul Biya and his guests for the feast.
And of course, officials in the southwest region of the country say that earmarked projects are moving in a positive light. Derek Jato, they're reporting from Buya, southwest region of the country. And that does it for this segment of the news. Our talking point is up next. Thanks indeed, viewers, for joining us tonight on Talking Point. Of course, we unveiled our guest before the news actually started. She is Reverend Sister Jacqueline Atabong. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you, Mimi.
Like we earlier talked about maybe the atmosphere reigning in church now, we also talked about how the Christians welcomed the message. Of course, I think so.
Yes,
so how was it welcomed by Christians? If you don't mind that we come back to it.
Oh, the Catholic Christians are all very happy, very excited to have a new leader, the Pope, and there has been great discussions. And I don't think it's just Catholics, because everywhere you go to, everybody's talking about him.
Talk of the town.
And I think everybody is happy because the Pope is not just a leader for the Catholic Church; he's a representative of Christ, and he's universal. So I think that is why everybody is happy, Catholics and non-Catholics, and they're all talking about the new Pope.
Now, aside of maybe apart from their reactions and how excited they are on the election of Pope Francis, there were, of course, diverse expectations from many Christians. Like today, our reporters talked to some Douala City dwellers who also expressed diverse views. So if I may find out from you, the way some of the Christians, of course, reacted, do you think that their demands were met or that they felt satisfied at 100%?
I've not heard so many other people, but from those I've heard, I think everybody is happy with the person God has given us as a leader, and we know and we believe that God would lead him because he has been chosen by God through the votes of the cardinals, and we cannot procrastinate, we cannot forecast, we cannot start imagining what will happen, but we believe.
Some are saying that we're expecting to have a black person or an African as a pope.
Well, God is the one who chooses, and we are happy with what we have received. You know, whenever something is coming, people have so many different ideas, but what we have, we are happy with.
So now we followed the interview or reactions of some Cameroonians in this capital city Yaoundé that was interviewed by Roland Akon, of course, telling us some of the problems plaguing the church. What are some of those problems according to you as an individual?
Well, I think the Pope is not coming to lead problems. The Pope is coming to lead Christians.
And also solve some of the problems.
Yes, the Pope is coming to lead Christians, and the Pope is going to lead us in our spiritual life as a church. In every society, there are problems. But it's not like focusing on, he's coming to solve problems. He's not coming as a problem solver, but he's coming as a leader of the church. And whatever difficulties he would meet, I think those are just a minority of things. I think that when people are talking too much about problems, it's like they're diverting from what is, which is his spiritual leadership and the leadership of the whole church. But they're trying to capitalize and emphasize on something really which is a minority and a minute detail, which I think would also be handled.
And I also think it's paramount maybe for some of these problems to be highlighted or brought to limelight to see how they could be solved. Don't you think so?
Yeah, well, some of the
problems that Christians were talking about, maybe clerical sex in church, and maybe infighting amongst Christians and others. What do you think? Don't you think that these are some of the problems that could be raised so that in the nearest future it could be looked into somehow?
Well, I actually believe that it is something that is brought out of proportion. A pope is elected as a leader, and it is not just that he's coming to solve a problem that people have overemphasized, which is not really a major problem in the church. And I believe that in leading Christians and in leading the church and in leading the priests, those problems will have their solutions.
Of course, Sister Jacqueline Atabang, you must have witnessed maybe the elections of other popes and maybe the ambience, the atmosphere, and how Christians are reacting. And what is peculiar about Pope Francis?
What's peculiar about Pope Francis is the fact that he's a little bit out of the ordinary, and you know, his attitude towards the poor, the needy, his simplicity and humility. You know, from what is being said, he takes sometimes the bus on the community buses. He visits the handicapped. He goes down to work with the poor. I think that is something
that's something that has been rare.
That is peculiar. You know, when you are in a certain position, well, your attitudes are constrained because of your work and your occupation, the people you have to receive. Well, he was not Pope when he was doing all that. We hope that he will continue in that spirituality, his attention to the poor and the needy, and because it is something that is really peculiar and that is attractive to, and which is at the center of the life of the gospel of Christ.
Now the choice of the name Francis, what does it mean? What does it signify?
Well, I don't know why he particularly chose it, but anybody who knows St. Francis, and from what we have been hearing about his attitude and his attention to the poor, I think that is the name Francis is somebody who worked with and for the poor and in his simplicity. So I believe he's choosing that name also, and with the attitudes which have already been explained about him, it comes to tie to the fact that probably he wants to give that face to the church, attention to the poor, simplicity, and you know, living the gospel literally as St. Francis did.
Like taking care of underprivileged, like you earlier said, and now talking about the fact that he's coming from a Jesuit community. Many people are some people are somehow ignorant about that particular community in the Catholic denomination. Could you clarify the doubts of some of those who know very little about the Jesuits?
Well, in the church you have what you call diocesan priests, and you have religious congregations. Religious congregations live in community, and the Jesuits are one of those religious congregations, and it is a very, like said, it was founded over 500 years ago, and they are people who do a lot of work with respect to the holistic development of the human person, and they are very much involved in the education of the human person, as well as even in the spirituality of the human person. So the Jesuits is a very powerful congregation that has lived for long, that has been a long time in the church, and have also helped because of their intellectual capacity, or the attention that is given to their intellectual preparation. It helps to answer a lot of questions or difficulties or challenges that the church faces. So we also have a lot of Jesuits in Cameroon, and even in Douala, you know, the famous college, College Liberman, that does very well. You know, they give this kind of holistic training to young people, and they do that everywhere in the world, and that is one of their peculiar attitudes.
Now, with all these virtues that a Jesuit possesses, do you think that it must have contributed maybe to the election of Pope Francis as a pope?
Well, I don't think it is because he is the Jesuit that he was elected, because he's the first Jesuit since 500 years of the existence of the Jesuit community in the Catholic Church, that a Jesuit is becoming a pope. I just believe it is, you know, what God wants. It is the guidance of the Holy Spirit that has brought that he is chosen to be the Pope at this time. I don't think it is particularly because he is a Jesuit that he was elected Pope.
Okay, thanks indeed, Sister Jacqueline Atabang, for joining us tonight on Talking Point, and we hope to have you some other time again.
Thank you, Mimi.
And to you viewers, we thank you so much. That was a Reverend Sister there coming in the wake of the election of the new Pope, Pope Francis. And we thank you so much for watching. Meantime, have a wonderful stay in the company of our programs, and good evening to you all.